Welcome to Leading Voices in EdTech, where we explore how students with dyslexia and language-based learning disorders can leverage artificial intelligence, or AI, to enhance their educational experiences. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by Holly Clark, an internationally recognized expert in AI and digital learning. Holly has made significant impact through her work as an author, speaker, and consultant, helping schools worldwide integrate AI and blended learning into their classrooms. Holly is the co-host of the Digital Learning Podcast with Matt Miller, where they dive deep into research-based ideas for transforming education through AI and technology. She has authored several influential books, including the AI-infused classroom, the Google-infused classroom, and the Chromebook-infused classroom, which have become essential resources for educators globally. She was one of the first teachers in the nation to implement a one-to-one classroom, and she now shares her knowledge and insights to help other educators tap into their blended learning genius. Holly has worked with over 75,000 educators, guiding them in understanding AI and empowering student learning experiences. She is committed to creating classrooms where students are engaged and can become agents of their own thinking and understanding. When she's not inspiring educators and transforming schools with her dynamic talks and creative genius, Holly walks the walk by actively working alongside teachers in the classroom. And yes, as anyone who follows her on social media can attest, she is a major league Swiftie. Thanks, Holly, for joining us today. Holly, we are so thrilled that you are here today with us. We have a zillion questions about AI and education and all of these things. And we know that you have been the early bird, really, on this whole exploration, just like you were with EdTech. So can you give a little backstory for all our viewers and tell us, how you got into EdTech and AI and how your journey has been thus far.
So I'll keep this quick, but in 1999, a parent in one of my classrooms gave me a one-to-one classroom, meaning one device for every student. 1999, we didn't really have Wi-Fi, so each of those computers had to be around the perimeter of the room and connected through Ethernet. So my IT department didn't love me, but being able to have that first one-to-one classroom, I taught in the Silicon Valley, and it meant that all of the parents at my school were somehow involved in the new tech revolution. So when I tried something in my classroom, they were never like, "No, you can't do that." They were like, "Do it and see what happens." Like, and they were very innovative. So that gave me a little different experience than most teachers who were early to the one-to-one, though I haven't met anyone who was earlier than me, but doesn't mean they don't exist. And so that, and then AI, when I was keynoting in Beijing in 2018, I noticed they were using tons of artificial intelligence, and that really spurred me to do some research on it. And so since about 2018, I've been saying to people in keynotes and when I'm presenting that AI is coming, we need to be thinking about it. And most people in 2018 were like, "No, I want to learn Google Docs." And I was like, "You're not going to really need to know that someday soon, but if that's what you need, we'll do it." So that's why I have this eye on ed tech, and then it was a natural transition to AI.
And then that led you to writing this gorgeous book, I think should be on the desk of every teacher and administrator. And clearly I have lots of different notes on this. And can you tell folks who was your helper in writing this book?
So I start the book by saying that it was a really great way for me to understand how much ChatGPT could help us. I am a person who has dyslexia, so getting words, I have great ideas, and I can think really well, but getting those words out is often difficult for me. And actually, sometimes just getting the words out, but then getting someone to kind of look at them and edit and give them grammar is important. So when I wrote this book, I got the words out on the Google Doc, and then I would go into ChatGPT and say, "Can you give me some recommendations? Can you give me five strengths and five weaknesses? Can you tell me where there's holes? Can you check my research?" And so I had a thought partner the whole time, and as a person with dyslexia, it made it the process so much more enjoyable and so much more to my strengths. And that was just then I started to see, wait a minute, I'm not the only person with dyslexia. I'm not the only neurodivergent person out there. How much could this help kids? So I wanted to get it right in the hands of kids, not ChatGPT per se, but AI I knew would help our neurodivergent learners.
Perfect segue to our next question, I think. You know, the convergence of AI and education, I think, is scary for a lot of folks, but has tremendous potential. So are there two or three critical factors that you could highlight for us about the relationship between AI and education?
Mhm. So, one of the things that we talk and hear a lot about is the anxiousness of the generation that's going through school. And one of the things I've noticed when I have the students on AI with a thought partner, and I tend to go to School AI, I love that app. Um, I notice there's less anxiousness as they're getting the help they need when they need it. I notice that there's more motivation. I notice that kids who generally, even kids who in a public school would have something like a para who follows them around to help them be successful, are just feel a little more confident with a thought partner that's AI, that's not judging them, that's not like, okay, let's do this. And so some of those things that I'm seeing is this like transition into the learner some of these kids have always wanted to be, and the kid they've always wanted to be in a classroom. I think that AI is really helping with that. And it's the most exciting part of it for me.
I could not agree more. So for those teachers who are super excited, but even those teachers who are sitting on the fence, what should they be thinking about and doing right now in their classrooms to help prepare students for this brave new world?
So I believe that we should have AI in the hands of kids. I don't think we live in a world where you can understand and know the technology so well that you're like, okay, I feel good bringing this into my classroom. I think you have to go outside of your comfort level right now. Um, I think that getting something like School AI, which gives kids a thought partner, but does it in a way that has guardrails and make sure that they're just helping them on this one part. Maybe you just need idea generation. Maybe you just need help with grammar. As a kid with dyslexia, all I heard growing up was that I'm bad at spelling and I'm never going to be successful because of it. That didn't pan out. And so I would just want a place where teachers are thinking, okay, if I get this in the hands of kids, they don't have to hear what a bad learner they are or that they're not good at this skill. They have that help that makes them and gives them confidence um, to be a different learner and or to think of themselves as a different learner. And also for teachers, I think Ethan Mollick, who is at the University of Pennsylvania, says that if everyone would just spend 10 hours in some large language model, you would become comfortable with AI and know what it does. And so for teachers, just getting comfortable and then in the classroom just making sure that kids understand how to collaborate with AI and how it can help them be uh, more confident, more less anxious, all the things. And no one's saying like replace everything you're doing with AI. We're saying when needed, when this will help a kid, yes, and if I were still in the classroom, I get to be in the classroom a bit, but if I were still just completely in the classroom, you wouldn't walk in and see AI all the time. You would see it when it could help a learner get to where they need to get next in their zone of proximal development. If I can have a thought partner do that, um, yes, please.
I could not agree more. And actually, it was Holly who turned me on to Ethan Mollick's book, Co-Intelligence.
So I've been reading the text, but also listening to the text.
Me too.
It is tremendously helpful. I do enjoy it. So I see what you're saying is really we need to be thinking more about and helping students understand it's more about the process and not the product.
Mhm.
I think ties into that whole fear that teachers have about cheating and all of that. So those are really good thoughts.
I am curious about the homework piece and how teachers should think, or how can we relieve teachers' worries that students are missing skill building opportunities if they are using AI to help them do their homework?
So I think when teachers think that, they're thinking of ChatGPT and or some large language model that gives answers. So like I can just have it write a paper for me, or I can say ask some questions about the War of 1812 and it's going to come back with answers. And that's kind of not the way teachers should be thinking. They should be thinking about a thought partner like School AI that's really going to dig deep into this information with the kid and really ask questions and get them to be thinking. And I think that a lot of teachers and educators have not seen this process. And so they're automatically thinking, well, I don't want a kid to go to ChatGPT and get answers. And I will tell you, I don't either. I don't think we get the skill building, but I do want a child to have a thought partner. And I think School AI, and I don't mean to keep going on in this app, but it's the one that I see the most beneficial for kids who are neurodivergent. And honestly, all of us are neurodivergent in some way. Um, School AI really is a safe place for a kid to get that help without getting answers. And I don't see that in other apps. I have to be honest. And so that's why I talk a lot about School AI. I also worry that when a parent hears a kid is using AI, they will automatically think ChatGPT as well. And the process they get, which is write an email for me and they get an email. So I think parents need to be exposed to School AI and or something like School AI. I know there's Flint, there's Mizzou. Um, uh, they need to understand that that's not what we're having them do so that they don't feel like there's no skill building. As soon as you go into School AI or an environment in which it's a thought partner, that kind of question is sort of off the table because you see what it can do. I think.
I think we agree very much. And in particular, our Association of LD schools, by their very nature are more low-tech users to begin with. So what should administrators in all schools really be thinking about? And I know that you had just shared the story about the school in, I think it's Massachusetts, right?
Yeah.
Sued.
Mhm.
So creating AI policies or guidelines. What else should they be seriously thinking about in order to support students and teachers?
So in Massachusetts, in case someone hasn't heard, I feel like it's a pretty big case, but a high school student in Massachusetts was doing a research project for his history class and used AI for the research. The teacher was probably one of those. This part I don't know. I'm making some assumptions here, so I could be wrong, but it feels like the teacher was like, "You can't use AI ever," and the kid was like, "Oh, I used it for research." And so he's like, "You can't use AI," and he gave him a 0 or a cheating grade. That 0 or cheating grade made it so he wasn't eligible for the National Honor Society. And the parents were like, no, there's no clear policy here on whether when they can use AI and when they can't. And so they went to federal court, which I think is super interesting because that means it's not just going to apply this case to Massachusetts. And in the federal court, they, of course, asked for the grade to be readjusted and all the things. But they also asked for there to be clear AI policy at the school and for all the staff to get trained on what effective AI integration looks like in the classroom. And I find that many schools are doing that. It's why I'm never home because I'm out helping people kind of think through that. But I think between Massachusetts and California just came out with a law that says in California, AI literacies must be taught. We don't know what that looks like yet, but the law has been, or the Senate bill has been passed. And so between those two, I think that there's going to be a lot of credibility given to the fact that we're going to have to use AI in classrooms. Now, if we're going to be using AI, when I talk about AI, I want to say again, I'm not talking about ChatGPT, but I'm going to share on the screen. And anyone who is maybe just listening to this, they can go to, and this might be hard to remember, but infuse.link, because my book is called the AI Infused Classroom. So infuse.link, and then /framework. And you'll be able to get to this framework. But I also did I like TikTok. So I made a TikTok and some things on LinkedIn about this, that if they had just had these expectations at this school in Massachusetts, they would have been able to not have the problem of there's no clear expectations giving around AI use. So this kind of breaks it down into 5 expectations. And I need to shout out the person I made it with, Alex McMillan out of Shanghai American School. And they're really doing some great work with AI, but saying that, okay, if we're going to use, let's say, this school AI bot, then while we're using it, you're allowed to ask it for ideas for your science fair project, let's say. And so I would take, and we have these 8.5 by 11 ones of these little steps. And I will say, right now we're in a level 2. And it doesn't even have to be a level 2. You could just say, right now, you can use AI for plans, but that's it. If you ask the AI to write the paper for you, that is outside of the expectations. And now we have a problem with academic integrity. Right now, people are just saying, oh, you have to have academic integrity. Well, what does that mean in a world of AI? And so I might then, after they do the idea, say, okay, now you can plan your paper. And I might put up a number 2, and they're both on there. And then there may be in school AI asking for things. And then I might say, okay, now it's time. Now that you've written something, why don't we get some information about your feedback and language? And then now number 4 goes up on the thing. Or maybe when kids go home, I say, okay, you can go to AI for some research ideas for plans, but you cannot write the paper. And so setting those clear expectations are what's missing right now. Everyone's like, oh, we'll change our AI policy to include this, this, and this. Well, it has to have these expectations. This comes from 2 years of watching kids use AI and hearing the language that resonates with them. So we created this to kind of help with that. And all I could think is, if the teacher had said, you know what, you have to think alone. Well, thinking alone in Massachusetts means that you're not using it for research, but he didn't spell that out. So, and most people are thinking that kids are using it just to write the paper, which I think we need to get past too. So I'm going to stop sharing that. That again is at Infuse link /framework or forward. Yeah, forward slash.
As well, so that all the folks watching can have that resource. But what I also love about that, Holly, is that we have it in student-friendly language. I think a lot of schools right now are working on creating these very intense AI policies or guidelines, and they're anywhere from 15 to that's over 20 pages.
Yeah.
And how in the world would students be able to understand this? It's like reading one of those terms of service agreements where you just click agree at the bottom and hope that it's okay. But I really, that's such a valuable resource. So I urge you all watching this to go to that link, think about it, adapting something like this for your school, whatever works for your school, and making sure that your students understand it. Yeah.
And adapt it. But this whole, there was this stoplight that was red, no AI, yellow, some AI. What does some AI mean? That you can't say that to a kid. And I understand early on, we didn't know what we were doing. And the stoplight method was like, oh, this is good. because at least we're saying something. But now we've had 2 years and we have to have more. Is it 2 or is it 3? It's 2, right? Yeah. So we have to say this better, and this comes from all of the work that I've done. And I'm sure it'll expand because I'm starting to write some AI literacies right now because California is making us. And I don't want a person who hasn't used AI with kids to be saying, here are the literacies. And it looks a lot different in the classroom than I think people might think it looks.
I could not agree.
Well, I think that, the issue of academic integrity is so interesting and sort of is a segue to larger and other ethical considerations in terms of integrating AI into the classroom, in terms of, for example, copyrights. I need to cite that this is someone's idea if it's not clearly stated. And, as an adult user, I might know where the idea came from, but a student may not.
So on it, actually, everyone, this is kind of new. So that's why we kind of went like this. So AI is generating something completely new. So it cannot be plagiarized. And that's pretty much coming from all AI experts at this point. So we have to redefine this idea of, like, we're putting 1985 kind of plagiarism into 2025. And because it generates something new, you'll never be actually plagiarizing someone's words. What you will be required to do is somehow cite that you used AI to refine your own thoughts, to expand on your own thoughts. But the idea of plagiarism, AI cannot, because it's generative, it's making something completely new. Same with an art thing. But I think that kids need to understand the idea that the art, if you're making an AI image, it's coming from sources, but it is just like if I looked at a painting and then came over here and did something, I'm creating something new. I think kids need to tell that they created this with AI, tell what parts they created with AI. And I think that's some of the stuff that I'm kind of going deep into right now with these AI literacies, because it's kind of like I just said, we're kind of putting 1985 ideas in this 2025 category. And we have to help kids know what to do in this next step when they use AI. So a lot of new stuff is coming out. One thing that's really important for administrators is the fact that we have these data privacy agreements. New York has one of the kind of most foundational ones. Data privacy is looking at the data that goes in from the student and whether or not that will be collected and shared, and it's not supposed to be. But now that we live in an AI world, the data that comes to the kids' screen, I think, needs to be also regulated at some level. Like, how do we know that they're getting the correct information? I've had AI from a different app, not School AI, tell the kids that Abraham Lincoln had owned slaves. He didn't own slaves. That's pretty well known. And so the data coming to the kids' screen, I think, is something we're going to have to think a lot more about going forward too. So those two things are going to shift underneath us, and the people who are thinking about those is what we need, in a state board of ed.
I agree. I think this is going to be sort of enlarging those EdTech local, state, and national agencies to have some new roles in there. But I do want to tell you about something, because I talked to one of the teachers here about your whole thought partner idea in school AI. And she kind of went off with that idea and then said, well, first I want to do something else. And students with dyslexia and other language-based disorders can struggle in written expression. So she had an image up, on the old smartboard, and said, okay, we are going to go into, I think she used ChatGPT. No, actually, I'm sorry. She used Copilot. And
Okay.
she's going to use AI to create an image that is going to match as closely as possible as this picture.
Cool.
So the kids were like, oh, this is going to be so easy.
It's-
Oh, it's a yellow room, it's this, it's that. So they started throwing things in there and she would type it all in. And then she would hit. And then, of course, they were like, oh, this takes so long for it to render,
Yeah.
So it came back with the first iteration. And it did not in any way, shape, or form look like the picture that was right next to it. And they said, oh, that's really not good. So then she said, okay, so we need to be more exact in our language, and we need to help our partner really understand the image that we are seeing. So anyway, it took the whole class period until they got to something that looked reasonably like the original image that she put up there. And she said it was great because it was the whole class participating in this. They were feeding off each other's ideas and collaborating really well, which is something that we don't always do here. It's much more, direct instruction model. And we got a chance to see what it takes to have that AI thought partner understand what it is that you want as the output. So it was really interesting. So I thank you for that whole framing of AI as a thought partner. And I want to ask, what other ways, in particular for this network of schools that will be watching this, what are ways that you think specifically will help students with dyslexia or other language-based disorders using AI?
So I'm glad you asked this because I've been wanting to jump in with this, but there is a new program called Notebook LM. It's from Google. It's free. It is for people over 18 at this point, but Notebook LM can take a reading passage, a PDF, a textbook in a book, if you just get the words and put it in. So anything that's web-based, you can put into it and it will create an audio overview. Now, when I saw the word audio overview, I was like, that sounds boring. But actually this audio overview is a deep dive podcast like thing with two AI people who are not real having a podcast about that information. And the way they break it down makes the information a conversation. And I think for kids with dyslexia who need to listen to things often to ingest it, I think Notebook LM is going to be incredible. Now, I said that you have to be 18. So what the teacher does is then create this deep dive podcast and put that in whatever, like on Google Classroom, and say, if you want to listen to this, here's a podcast version of it. Here's a version to read. Maybe they could do both and strengthening both skills. But I think for kids with dyslexia and kids with processing disorders and even executive functioning who just don't even think about how am I going to get all of this done? Well, I can listen to this on my way home on the train or in a car. I think Notebook LM is going to be a game changer when we start to use it the right way. I was just in Pennsylvania, and in Pennsylvania, the state, every teacher has to have this ethics PDF that they have to read. And it's 22 pages of pretty boring. So I threw that thing into Notebook LM. It made a 9-minute podcast, and that's how the teachers ingested that information in this one school district, not every Pennsylvania teacher. But that's the kind of things that it can do. So I'm so excited for that because that's how I take in information, is I listen to it. And for a long time, people have been telling me, oh, that's not the same as reading. And, oh, you're not really reading it. And I'm like, I'm not decoding it, but I'm getting the information in my brain. So, I'm hoping we can rethink.
Really broad. And I appreciate in your work how you present that. Texts are there to play. It's not just a book or an article. It can be artwork. It can be so many digital resources and so on. I love your explore boards and bringing that into the classroom for students. I'm curious what your thoughts are staying with the students with dyslexia and other LDLD. I think there's hope in the community, right? That AI will be able to individualize interventions for students and really kind of accelerate the remediation process. What are your thoughts about, where we are in that process? Is the future hopeful for that?
I think the future is hopeful for that. We're certainly not there yet. I think somebody somewhere is working on it. But right now, I think just getting kids help in real time when they need it so they're not stuck is where we are in this kind of, I like to call it beta AI. It's not really beta, but beta in the classroom. I think teachers need to understand also how you use AI to personalize things. And we've been talking a lot about personalized learning, but I'm not sure that every teacher really understands that process when we have AI. We understand it in terms of differentiation, but differentiation just got a bionic whatever. And so now I think we have to step back for a second and really talk about what does personalization look like. Probably not in your schools. You're probably doing it well because you have to, but in public schools or other places, I don't know that we've spent the right amount of time on personalization and what that looks like when we have these tools. But to answer your question, I'm 100% sure they're coming. Do I know where they're coming from? No, but they have to be coming. And ChatGPT right now has a lab of robots that are pretty advanced. And the last time I looked into this ChatGPT lab was 6 months ago, so I can't even imagine where they are now. And I didn't look in; I saw a video. But I imagine that every student in the next decade will have their own robot who's helping them along the way. That robot will probably be fed with data about their learning style, their learning stats, and know where it is they need help. And I think that's going to be super exciting and maybe create bionic humans who are so smart because they're getting that help in real time when they need it and not having to wait for the teacher and not waiting for that thing to come back. That maybe we've always said we use 2% of our brains. Maybe this gets us to that other part, or 10%, whatever it is. Maybe this unleashes that new thing, and we're afraid, like AI smart, what's going to happen? Maybe it unleashes an intelligence in us that we're like smarter than we've ever been. So I don't have the answer for what it is, but it's definitely coming.
I know it fills me with hope and optimism right now. And I'm wondering, as we're kind of on the strand of personalizing learning, and I'm just thinking in terms of, because I think it was a couple of months back, we've been looking at Toddle for curriculum mapping and looking at the possibilities for learning management system. And of course, they've been working very hard on AI integration with that. And it brought up all sorts of questions for me about how it can help teachers, and to go to your point about making us smarter and really thinking about each student as an individual and really thinking about the progress of their work as an individual. It has this capability of looking at all of the grades, the teacher's input, all of the work that has been uploaded by the student into this portfolio, and then helping sort of the thought partner in terms of report card comments and giving you feedback on the grades that you would like to assign, because perhaps there are things that AI is better at detecting patterns of performance that we haven't really been able to see. Sometimes you really have to take a step back, right?
And the time.
If I know there seems to be a fear from some administrators, understandably, and parents, understandably, about using AI sort of as a grading mechanism as well. but I wonder if it doesn't have the capacity at some point to say, okay, this is Holly's work, and this is the third draft in this series, and I understand the progress she's made against the rubric that you, Joan, are using as a teacher.
Yeah.
And have you noticed that she's done this, this, and this? Because perhaps I haven't.
Mm-hmm. And actually, you gave me hope in kind of describing that. I'm a big fan of Toddle, just to put that on the thing. But think of that, what you just talked about, looking at Holly's overall progress instead of my fourth grade teacher who harped on my spelling all day long. I'm okay without being able to spell, but had she looked at, but she's really poetic. She's really good at higher order thinking. She, like any dyslexia, can take these things and bring them out to other people in a way that people can understand it. And had she had AI to look at me differently, how amazing would that be? I think people need to stop getting afraid of AI. I wouldn't even want to go to the doctor right now and if they weren't also checking AI. And the same thing should be true of education. We should be looking at that data in new ways now that we can. And we should be getting a different story about the student and not focusing in on the things that they're not good at, but rather what are they really good at? Because that's where they're going to probably find their job. Mine is in speaking, which any dyslexic should be doing probably because that's their strength. Um, and had someone said that and I focused on those kinds of things instead of spelling all day long, think how much less traumatic and how much more well adjusted I wouldn't be in my 50s talking about spelling that my fourth grade teacher talked about. You know what I'm saying? Like the anxiousness that we can alleviate uh, it's just all so inspiring, right? And the fact, and it brings like gets me a little choked up. The fact that some teachers are saying, well, I'm going to close down my classroom and I'm not going to be using AI because kids won't get skills. When we hear stories like you just told and the one I was talking about earlier, like it's so powerful what can happen for kids. And you don't want to open up your classroom to AI because maybe you don't understand it. Like, we have to move past that now because we have this incredible opportunity to equalize education for every kid, to draw on their strengths, to democratize this experience. Um, and and I'm so excited by that. And I just can't go through what I went through with the technology, with the computer, where teachers would be like, I'm just not tech savvy. When Google has been around for 25 years. So how long do you need to get tech savvy? Because if 25 years is not enough, I'm not going to help you in the AI where you're going to get probably 3 years to catch up. You have one more left, and we can work with you on that. But this is about kids at this point. It's about their self-esteem, about their abilities, about them thinking of themselves differently. And so I can only go to so many schools. Someone's got to like change this narrative because, like, I watched a kid with dyslexia the other day get they were working with AI, and this is how it went down. It was a second grader, and they were doing the main character for a story. And the AI bot came on and said, "Hey, you're doing a main character. Who or what is your main character?" And the little girl typed in Bunny. I think she actually said it. And so I'll use typed, but she probably said it. And they said, "Oh, Bunny. Well, what color is your bunny?" And she said, "It's pink." And she said, "Oh, you have a pink bunny. Well, how does your bunny feel?" "Well, my bunny is super happy." "Okay, so your bunny is super happy. What's the problem your bunny is facing?" And then she went into like the problem. And then it kept asking these questions for her to develop that main character, where I had watched this little girl sit, and the teacher did everything she could. She gave her graphic organizers, which is great, but it was not reaching this kid. When you're a kid with dyslexia, graphic organizers helpful, but it's not your end all. It definitely helps, But to see what this little girl did when just this main character bot was there, then the minor character bot came. So she was getting all of this stuff and she wrote it down into her notebook and she was able to create a story. The teacher, I was out presenting and the teacher sent me a text and she said, all the kids are done with their stories in a week and it usually takes a month. And like, that's the kind of progress that I'm seeing. And this little girl came to me afterwards and she was like, thank you so much. I needed this help. And she had like, and she said it in second grade words, but that's the kind of stuff when I see that, and then I see another teacher being like, we're not using kids got to have skills. I'm like, how was that not building skills? That was. That was just not letting a little second grader sit there and be stuck because her teacher didn't have time to come and go, well, what color is your bunny? The next thing. And she's not really good at reading the graphic organizer always, and then getting that process to her head and then getting it back out. And it was just beautiful to watch. It's just so inspiring to watch for especially any sort of I want to say neurodivergent, but it's not. It's for every learner. We all need this help. At second grade, we all needed help with our major character or the main character. Sorry.
We, student engagement is such a huge component in our classrooms, keeping with learners engaged, especially as students get older. There's a lot of research at the middle school and high school levels about how critical engagement is to the reading process and the learning process in general. And having a thought partner, right, in AI, everything, you can maintain sort of consistent engagement that way. So I think that, that's one possibility for teachers who maybe are feeling a little bit hesitant to try it out, to pilot different activities with it and see if it boosts engagement.
Mm-hmm. Just having those ideas of how to use it is really important because someone might not think of having it for helping with them, the main character.
Mm-hmm. And I think, and I would love if you would share that story, because I think, especially for our students, when typing is more of a struggle, and we start them in fourth grade, but it takes some time to get, sort of that muscle memory in. So I love the fact that School AI, I just click on the mic, and I can ask the question. I don't need to type it in. But would you share that story about, I think they were first graders who were in a space, I don't want to steal the.
Oh, you want me to say it?
Yes, yeah, because I think for our student population,
Yeah.
that idea of how you can spark curiosity it's so important. And we know for students with dyslexia, the ability to build background knowledge is everything in their comprehension. So I'm sorry, I don't want to steal your thunder.
Well, I think we have to design for curiosity, right? And I think we don't often talk about that. And when we design for curiosity through questioning techniques and questioning protocols and those kinds of things, then we get engagement. You get engagement because you have background knowledge, because you're curious about something. But when we walk in, and I'm just going to use a typical American school and just be like, we're going to learn the quadratic equation today and you're going to like it. We don't take into account what builds engagement. How do you design curiosity? Curiosity just doesn't come, and that's why the explore boards are a great way to build that curiosity. But so a first grade teacher came to me. The fourth and fifth grade kids at this school have been using something called School AI, and what we've been talking about, but they have been talking about it on that playground. They were using it around Taylor Swift, so it was everyone was talking about it. And the first grade teacher came to me and said, I have to teach a unit on stars and constellations. Can we use that School AI thing? And I'm like, sure. When do you want me to come? And she's like, can you come in like 15 minutes? And because I'm a tech integration person, I knew I had her. So I'm like, I'll be there. And so I just went into School AI. I went to something called a sidekick. I put in the prompt, I put teach kids about stars, teach first graders actually about stars and constellations Keep your answers simple and don't let them go off task. That's all I put. I walked in and we put it in for these kids, they use Clever. So we put it in Clever, could be in Toddle, could be in whatever. And they went to it and they hadn't used a lot of technology. So as soon as they started opening it up and they had their headphones on, they had been told about their headphones. And yes, we had talked about AI before this. We just didn't go in and be like, use AI. We talked about what AI is and what a chatbot is. But when we got to that part where they're putting on their headphones, all of a sudden their microphones weren't allowed. So there's 6. I had to go around to every computer and allow the microphones, and that they started to ask questions of this chatbot about stars and constellations. So when I got done with the last kid, I look up at the teacher and I'm like, did they learn anything? And she's like, I don't know. They have their headphones on. I have no idea. So she said, let's bring them to the carpet. So we bring them to the carpet and we're like, what did you learn? And the first thing they said is, oh, my chatbot was so nice. Oh, mine was a boy. And that was cute and everything. But we were like, no, what did you learn? And so I get out my phone because I want to see what they learned and I want to record it. I know how long this happened because I had my phone out for 7 minutes. Every hand was up. And it started with, I learned, and these are 6-year-olds, I learned that when you're on the earth, the sun is yellow, but when you're in the atmosphere, using the term atmosphere, first of all, it's white. And I was like, I don't even know if I knew that. We're like, okay. And another kid said, did you know that's because of hydrogen? And I know this kid doesn't understand how the hydrogen, but he now has some background knowledge that there's something going on with hydrogen in the atmosphere that's changing the color of the sun. And then another kid said, well, did you know that the sun is 4.5 billion years old? And another kid had their hand up and said, did you know that the sun is also a star? And another kid said, did you know that when the stars get together, they're called a constellation? And another kid raised their hand and said, yeah, constellations can look like things you recognize in real life. And they just kept going on and on and on. And I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, did this first grade teacher teach them this already? Because like, you should have told me. And so a special teacher comes to the door and they go off to their special. And I said to her, I'm like, so you taught this already? And she goes, no, I have not taught this before. And I'm like, what do you think happened? Like, how come they knew so much? And she's like, I've never seen anything like it. But if I have to guess, it's because they got to ask the questions. And so they had gone and their Chromebooks were still open. And I went and looked at their screens. There were pages and pages and pages and pages of questions they were asking. And then that chatbot, because it's School AI, would come back and be like, so what's your favorite star? Like, what stars do you see in the sky? So they were having to think, and they weren't just getting a star is this, and then this is what makes up a constellation, which happens in other apps. And so that was the first time that I had worked with 6-year-olds and seen such engagement, such learning. And I was after that activity that I was kind of done. I was like, School AI is my app. I'm not going anywhere else. Like it was amazing. And every time I went to a classroom, I had the same experience. They were asking all these questions. They were like, oh, and I never got to do that. My teacher said, today we're going to learn about California history. We're going to open the textbook and we're going to read Jigsaw. You read this paragraph and you read this paragraph. And no wonder I was not interested. I never got to have background knowledge. I never got to ask my own questions. I never got to investigate. I never anything. And so all the things that we've ever wanted for education, when we talk about inquiry and things like that, they're all possible now in a way that I never imagined would happen in my lifetime. And people want to shut down their classroom to AI.
I love that image of those children, and I the emphasis on the curiosity, I think, is really incredibly significant, especially as we sort of enter, the stage where there is still a lot of fear around AI, and we grow our curiosity, and we want to grow children's curiosity, and what a wonderful way to do it.
I couldn't agree more. And I love that was actually the first lesson, in the unit. And I just think I go back to that background knowledge and Hugh Catt's work, especially the students with dyslexia. forming that foundational background knowledge is everything. So what if you started a unit with this? You know, you just need the headphones with mics, and you just need to let them loose and set those parameters in school AI or the similar tool, but I'm with you, I'm a big fan. And I just think that gives us so much runway. And it opens up all these other possibilities. So of course, we would love you to be the predictor of the future. And with everything that you know, because you've been out there, you've been places where it's really cutting edge use. So what do you think future trends might be that we might see in schools?
Well, I think future trends are that there's not going to be any question. You're going to have to use AI. It's not going to be up for debate. It's a law in California. In California, generally will start trends. I think AI literacy is going to be an important thing. And as we've had this tech thing already. So we've learned some lessons. And I think we need to take those lessons into this AI revolution. And one of those is that you don't have a class for AI literacies. AI literacy is in every class all the time. And an AI literacy can be as simple as creating an image and the collaboration and talking about what happened. And I think this time too, you don't get a, your classroom doesn't get to not have this skill. I think we have to give teachers training. We've got to do better with the training. And so if we take some of the things that we learned from the online kind of thing that we had with Google and being online, and we take them into this and learn from these mistakes. One of those mistakes, in my opinion, is not getting kids to validate information, to ask, now it's AI, could there be bias and misinformation in what you're telling me? We have to do that better, because I think it played out really poorly in the US because we didn't ask kids to validate what they were finding online. And we got to a place in the US where people believed that JFK Jr. was alive and going to come back because they found a website that said that this is true. And I think that happened because we didn't take the literacy of being online and validating information serious enough. And this time, we're going to have to get a little more serious about it. And I don't know how that plays out, because I know that everyone's looking to the State Department of Ed. The State Department of Ed is great, but they're not actually in classrooms doing this with kids. So I don't know what this is going to look like in that future trend, but the trend will be, we have to use AI, period. We will be using AI. So you can either adapt now or you're going to adapt in a year or two. But why not just make it easier on yourself and adapt now for your kids too, your students?
Lessons together. I personally love using AI as a thought partner, and I've been really amazed by kind of the variation that I can get in output, where it will give me outlines, it will give me the information that I might put in a graphic organizer, it will give me information that I would put on a PowerPoint slide and then recommend design elements or graphic elements to make the information more digestible. And it's a huge time saver.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was listening to a podcast with John Hattie.
Mm-hmm.
I remember back in 2009, 2010, whenever his visible learning out. And around the same time, he came out with a sort of a top 10 skills for students. You know, what the future held. This is what kids should be graduating high school with these 10 skills. And it was so interesting because in the podcast, he said, actually, after spending, the past year and a half in AI, he said, I want to take that list and throw it away. He said, I think that it comes down to 3 skills, which really has been what you've been talking about. He said, I think they need probative questioning. You have to understand that this is a conversation, and that they have to listen carefully to the response and think about, how do I get to the next level? And then they need to be critical assessors, which is exactly what you were just saying. And third, they need to make evaluative judgments. And I thought that was so interesting because I think as we have been using AI as a thought partner in our work, I think we try to spread our wings a little bit and become a little bit more wise about kind of pushing the parameters and thinking about all the different possibilities, right? Trying to think beyond what we're so used to thinking. And I wonder how we can help students understand that, because there are ways that we want to know how we can hone their critical thinking skills in this world of AI. But I wonder, how can we push them to think about, how can I ask AI, what am I not thinking of? What are other connections I can make? I don't know. What do you think?
So I think it comes back down to the right question technique, the question formulation technique, and getting that into the hands of kids and looking at what questions really mean, dissecting the difference between, and I don't mean just saying this is closed-ended question and this is an open-ended question. What really lives in an open-ended question? What really lives in a closed-ended question? And getting back to getting kids to ask questions and looking at those questions more critically. And people like Trevor McKenzie with his inquiry stuff. And I just looked around, and I'm still looking around while you're talking. He just came out with a inquiry mindset questions edition, which I think is just so relevant to right now. I sent it to my friend Matt because we're doing these AI literacies together. And I'm like, this is the literacy. You might want to put it into an AI bubble, but making questions and asking questions and getting information from those questions and what do I do next with those questions is going to be so important. And we have been focused on answers in education. The answers are there. Get over answers. We now need to design for curiosity. We need to have kids understanding how to ask better questions, having these, he's got 7, I think, maybe it's 9 question protocols. So he's taken the question formulation technique and turned them into different protocols. So you're not always doing the same thing. And I think with Hattie on that first part being questions, I agree. And I think we need a little mea culpa moment about letting kids ask questions and teaching them how to ask questions, because we don't know how to ask good questions. If we did, we wouldn't be thinking that JFK Jr. was still alive. We wouldn't be in this bubble of misinformation.
Yeah,
So
the truth. I always look every year at the World Economic Forum, publishes the top 10 to 15 every year. And I just, it was one of the slides in my AI presentation to our faculty. I said, can you see how from 2020 to 2023, that suddenly curiosity has popped up as one of the needed skills? And I think it's the influence of AI, because you didn't see it. Analytical thinking is always number one every single year. But suddenly curiosity made this leap up into the top. And I thought, it's gotta be because we focus so much on giving us the right answers that we really haven't focused on how do you ask the right questions.
And if you think about it, we grew up in a time when there was a dictionary with one definition for something. And if you go to AI right now and you ask, define AI hallucination, every time you go, it's going to give you a different answer. So we're going to have to redefine some things in education, not only the question, but the answer is going to be nuanced now. What does that mean in terms of literacies? So we have a lot to really think about. And I don't think we're going to have a lot of time. We're going to need to really start having those conversations at staff meetings and administrative tables.
So we're going to encourage people to go to your website, start reading, start thinking about it, think about the examples that we shared today, right? You also have the great podcast that you do with Matt Miller, and that is called
The Digital Learning Podcast.
And you can on every
And
podcast.
anything, yeah.
And so if you are not that much of a reader, but you're a listener, you can certainly listen to that podcast. I think is really helpful.
And I will say one thing, my website is hollyclark.org, so pretty easy to remember. But there's not a lot on there, but there's information on how to get in touch with me if you need any AI training or whatever. But I am now training so many teachers right now. I haven't put a thing on that website in a while because this AI revolution, people are starting to take it seriously. So I don't have time to do that, but that's a good thing. I also have dyslexia and it takes me a very long time to write a blog post. So I started instead thinking my voice is better heard on little TikToks or in the podcast. So those are places. Social media, I do a lot more. And you can follow me on that at Holly Clark EDU. So
Practically every social media there is, right?
Yeah.
Any other last words of advice for our LD schools? Any other things that they should perhaps be thinking about?
well, somebody's got to do your training. You can't leave teachers floundering in this particular situation. I know budgets are not great right now, and I'm hoping maybe we get some relief on that. In California, it's the worst ever. But yeah, you're going to have to get this training sooner than later for teachers to understand this. And when you do, and they do understand AI, your scores are going to go up. I promise you.
Words of wisdom.
Absolutely.
Holly, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate your time, your advice for our network of schools and schools out there everywhere. And again, this is a great, fast read, and it's filled with wonderful, wonderful advice. But also, your website, social media, the podcast. So there's lots of different channels. And we know that when people start to explore and get in there and think about things, the world is your oyster. And just one other thing schools can think about is something that we're going to be starting shortly, and this really came from our teachers, is that they want to work in small groups once a week, sharing ideas.
Yes.
So what did you just try? Because, teaching can be so isolating. And you might be afraid to kind of share your ideas and thoughts because maybe your school is one that's maybe forbidding, AI use right now. So the ability to meet in small groups and exchange information and start to build up that knowledge, I think it's a great idea.
I love it.
Well, I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, please do.
All right. Well, thank you, Holly.
Thank you, Holly. So
Yeah, and thanks for having me. It's been a really fun conversation.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us this week on AI Insights in EdTech Leading Voices. We hope you have enjoyed these engaging conversations on artificial intelligence, its impact in education, and some tools built to support teachers and students with the learning process. Save the date! The Windward Institute and the Windward School are excited to welcome Dr. Jeannie Wanzik for the 2025 Robert J. Schwartz Memorial Lecture. Mark your calendar. Stay updated on our professional development offerings by subscribing to our newsletter. Be informed, be inspired, transform lives with Windward.